Hello, my name is Father Andrew Allman. I'm the priest at St Clair's Church in Preston. I'd like to share with you today chapter 14 of the ACN Children's Bible. This is the story of the plagues that came to Egypt. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. They demanded, "Let our people go free. God wishes it." But Pharaoh had no intention of setting the Israelites free. He said, "Who is the God of Israel, that I should listen to him? I do not know him, and I will not let the Israelites go. I will have them do even more work, so that they do not forget who is their master." The same day he ordered the slave drivers, "Make the Israelites work so hard that they forget this idle talk." The Israelites groaned under their burden. Moses prayed to the Lord, and God promised him, "I am God, and I will lead you out of Egypt. I will adopt you as my own people. You will recognize that I am your God. I will bring you to the land I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you as your inheritance." God let the Pharaoh feel his might. Terrible plagues struck Egypt. Hailstorms fell, crops were ruined, plagues contaminated the drinking water and killed cattle. Insects infested the houses. The air became so dirt-ridden that all the Egyptians broke out in sores and boils. The Pharaoh was quite aware of the source of this misfortune. Twice, 3 times, he pretended he would free the Israelites from their slavery, but as soon as the plagues were over, he broke his word. When I listen to this story, I think of how, in a way, for the Israelites, it seemed like everything was going wrong. There were terrible plagues, there were insects everywhere, there were hailstorms, there were all sorts of things going on that they must have not liked, must have been quite unpleasant for them. And yet all the time, God was working, because God knew that because of those plagues, he would be able to free them. So even though it seemed to them like bad things were happening, actually God was working in the background all of the time. He was looking after them, and he was going to free them from slavery so that they wouldn't be slaves anymore, but they would be people who were free, and they'd be given their own land, their own place in which they could live. Then I'm looking at Pharaoh and thinking about how he reacts to things. And the first thing is when God says, let the people go, he says, "Who is God? Why should I listen to God?" Maybe sometimes we find ourselves a little bit like that as well. God tells us to do something, God teaches us to do something, which he knows is right and he knows it's good for us. But we think, why should I listen to God? This is what I want to do instead. And it's not just of God, of course, as well. It could be your mum and dad, it could be people who have some kind of authority over us, teachers or other people who we have to listen to. And they say, "Can you do this for me?" And we say, "Why should I do this? I don't want to do this. I want to do this instead." But maybe in this story, God is teaching us not to be like Pharaoh, to try not to just always do what we want, but to listen to the people who teach us and help us, people who look after us, so that we can do the right thing and do what God wants us to do, and try and listen to God as well. Think of the things that God is asking us to do, about all the things he teaches us about loving one another, to really try and do those things, even when it's hard, even when it takes a bit of effort and we don't always feel like it. Pharaoh is really nasty to them then. He says, if they're going to be lazy and if they don't want to serve me, I'll make them work even harder. And sometimes maybe we can be like that as well. If something happens we don't like, we can go against it a little bit and try and kick back in some way. But let's try not to be like Pharaoh. He gives us all the wrong example. The other thing he does is he pretends that he's going to let them go free. 2 or 3 times he says, "Oh yeah, I'll let them go." And then he changes his mind when he thinks he can get away with it. But God teaches us a different way. A way which is for us to try and to do what we're asked to do, to listen carefully to his voice, and not just to say we'll do something and then change our minds, but really to try and do what's right and do what we say we will do as well. On the other side, we've got Moses, who's not like Pharaoh at all. And when things seem to be going wrong, when Pharaoh says no, when he makes the people work harder, Moses goes to God and he says to God, "Please help us." And he puts all his trust in God. What a great example for us as well. So maybe as we listen to this story today, we can think about these things for ourselves. Do we try to be like Moses and put our trust in God, especially when things are hard and difficult? And do we try to listen to what God tells us, like Moses did? Or are we sometimes a little bit like Pharaoh, wanting to do our own thing instead? And let's try and look at these two people, make the right choice, and really be as good as we can, being like Moses, the man who put his trust in God and the man who God helped.